Got a text from my husband, I don't love you anymore. I want a divorce. He wrote that from now on all contact would go through his lawyer. So I made a phone call. When his lawyer found out who he was talking to on the phone, he started screaming. I still remember the moment my phone buzzed, a notification popping up on my screen. It was a message from Alex, my husband of 10 years. A message that shattered everything I thought I knew. I don't love you anymore. I want a divorce. From now on, all contact will go through my lawyer. That was it. No explanation. No apology. Just a cold, calculated decision sent in a text message. At first, I thought it was a joke. A cruel one. My fingers trembled as I stared at the screen. Alex was at work. Or at least that's where he was supposed to be. There were no warning signs, no late-night arguments, no hints that he had checked out of our marriage. We weren't perfect, but I believed we were solid. So why was he ending it like this? I tried calling him. No answer. I texted back. No response. Confusion turned into panic. Then anger. A decade of marriage and this is how he ended it? A text? Not even the decency to face me? I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. Maybe he was going through something. Maybe this was a mistake, but something about the way he worded it felt off. The fact that he immediately cut all communication and directed me to his lawyer wasn't just cold. It was premeditated. My gut told me there was more to this. And so I made a phone call to his lawyer. The line rang twice before a deep, polished voice answered. This is David Green. How can I help you? I cleared my throat, trying to steady my voice. David, it's Kelly. Alex just sent me a text saying he wants a divorce. You're his lawyer, right? There was silence, too long of a pause, a hesitation that made my skin prickle. Then he exhaled sharply as if something had just gone terribly wrong. Mrs. Carter. His tone changed, now laced with a tension that hadn't been there before. Are you saying Alex has already filed for divorce? A chill ran down my spine. Why was he asking me this? Shouldn't he already know? I swallowed. I don't know if he's filed yet. All I got was a text telling me it's over and that all communication needs to go through you. Another pause. Then suddenly, the lawyer's voice rose, frantic and panicked. God damn it, Alex, you idiot, he shouted. Not at me, but at someone in the background. I heard the sound of paper shuffling, a chair scraping against the floor. Something was wrong. Very, very wrong. When he spoke again, his voice was lower but rushed, urgent. Listen to me carefully, Kelly. Have you signed anything? Any documents? I shook my head, though he couldn't see me. No, nothing. Just the text. Good. Don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything. And for the love of God, don't talk to Alex. My pulse pounded in my ears. What's going on? I demanded. Why are you yelling? A door slammed on the other end of the line, followed by muffled voices. Then David lowered his voice, speaking fast. Kelly, I'm not supposed to be telling you this, but your husband has been keeping secrets from you. Huge secrets. If he divorces you before you find out, he keeps everything. Find out what? My throat felt dry. What are you talking about? David let out a heavy sigh. Look, I need to go, but I'll say this, Alex screwed up big time. And if you sent that text before I could finalize everything, then you still have a shot at getting what you're owed. What am I owed? I pressed, but then the line went dead. I pulled the phone away from my ear, staring at the screen in disbelief. I had called expecting the usual legal formalities, maybe a cold explanation from a detached lawyer. But this? Panic, fear, secrets. My marriage wasn't just over. It was a trap. And now I needed to find out what Alex had been hiding before it was too late. My fingers tightened around my phone, my mind racing with the lawyer's last words. Your husband has been keeping secrets from you. If he divorces you before you find out, he keeps everything. I read the text from Alex again. It felt different now, less like a cold goodbye, and more like a carefully crafted move. I had spent 10 years building a life with this man. And now, in a matter of minutes, it felt like I didn't even know who he was. My instincts screamed at me to call him, demand answers. But David, the lawyer, had warned me against that. Instead, I needed information. I paced my living room, heart hammering. My mind went back to the last few months searching for anything strange I might have missed. Alex worked in finance, managing investments, and while he had always been secretive about money, I never thought much of it. Had he been hiding something all along? I needed to talk to someone who might have answers. I scrolled through my contacts, hesitating before pressing call on the one person who might know something. Lisa. Lisa had been Alex's assistant for years, practically running his office. She and I weren't close, but she had always been kind to me, and she knew Alex's work habits better than anyone. The phone rang once, twice, then she answered. Kelly. Her voice was surprised. Larry. Lisa, hey. Sorry to call you out of nowhere, but have you talked to Alex today? A brief pause. No. Not really. Is everything okay? I swallowed, forcing my voice to stay steady. He texted me saying he wants a divorce out of nowhere. Said everything goes through his lawyer now. Lisa sucked in a sharp breath. Oh? That was not the reaction I was expecting. You knew, didn't you? I pressed. Another silence. Then finally, I had a feeling something was going on. He's been acting strange for weeks. My stomach twisted. Strange how? Secretive, she admitted. Meetings off the books. He started making a lot of wire transfers to an account I didn't recognize. And last week? She hesitated. What? I urged. Last week, I overheard him talking to someone. I don't know who, but he said, once she signs, it's all mine. She won't even know what she lost. I froze. Once she signs, it's all mine. A cold wave of realization washed over me. This wasn't just about a divorce. Alex was trying to cut me out of something big, digging for answers. I ended the call with Lisa and went straight to Alex's home office. Even though he had moved most of his work online, he still kept physical files in a locked drawer. The lock? I knew the code. I knelt down, punching in the numbers. The drawer clicked open. Inside, a pile of neatly stacked financial statements, legal documents, and bank statements. My hands shook as I shuffled through them, and then I saw it. A statement for a bank account I didn't recognize. $8,600,000. I had to blink, certain I was reading it wrong. 8,600,000.0. And the account, only in Alex's name. I flipped through more pages, my pulse pounding. He had been transferring money into this account for over a year, moving assets, hiding wealth. And now he wanted me to sign divorce papers before I ever found out. My mind reeled back to David, the lawyer, and his immediate panic. He thought I knew, but I hadn't until now. Now I understood why David freaked out when I called. He knew I was entitled to half. And if Alex had already filed, he had probably told David that I was out of the picture, clueless and compliant. Except now, I wasn't. And I sure as hell wasn't going to let Alex get away with this. I pulled out my phone, staring at the screen. This time, I wasn't calling Alex. I was calling David back. And this time, he would tell me everything. I stared at the bank statement in my trembling hands. $8,600,000. A fortune I had no idea existed until now. Alex had been moving money for over a year, slowly siphoning funds into a secret account under only his name, and now he wanted to cut me out completely. I felt a white-hot surge of rage, not because of the money itself, but because of the betrayal. We had built a life together, a marriage I thought was real. And while I had been working, loving, and supporting him, he had been planning his exit. I gritted my teeth, grabbed my phone, and called David Greenback. This time, I wouldn't let him dodge my questions. The line rang once before he picked up. His voice was tight. Kelly. David, I said, my tone ice cold. You told me not to sign anything. To not talk to Alex. You panicked when I called. Now I know why. Silence. Then he exhaled sharply. You found it, didn't you? My fingers clenched around the phone. The secret bank account? Oh, yeah. I found it, and I assume there's more. So, David, you better start talking. Kelly, listen. No, you listen, I snapped. Alex tried to pull this off quietly. He thought I wouldn't notice. He planned to leave me with nothing, but now I know the truth. And you, David, knew all along. He let out a curse under his breath. Fine, he muttered. You want the truth? Here it is. Alex has been preparing for this divorce for over a year. He's been shifting assets, moving money offshore, and setting up legal barriers to keep you from touching a cent. I swallowed hard, my anger boiling over. Why? I demanded. Why not just be honest instead of stabbing me in the back? David sighed. Because he thought you'd fight him, and if you fought, you'd win. I sucked in a breath. He knew I was entitled to half. Let me guess, I said bitterly. He was going to drag this out in court until I got tired, accepted some small settlement, and walked away. David hesitated. That was the plan. I clenched my jaw. That son of a... Not only that, David continued, voice grim, but he was planning to tell the court that the money was his alone, that he earned it without your help, meaning you weren't entitled to a single cent. My stomach twisted in disgust. He was going to lie. David didn't answer. He didn't have to. I exhaled sharply, forcing myself to think. Alex thought he had already won. He thought he had played me, but now I had the upper hand. David, I said carefully, you're his lawyer. Why are you telling me this? A dry chuckle. Because your husband is an idiot. That caught me off guard. He doesn't listen, Kelly, David continued. I warned him that this was illegal. I told him that if you found out, it would blow up in his face. But Alex thought he was untouchable, that you'd just cry for a few weeks and sign the papers. He sighed. I guess he forgot who he married. I smirked despite myself. That's where he made his biggest mistake, I murmured. David hesitated. Kelly, I shouldn't be saying this, but if you play your cards right, you could ruin him completely. My grip on the phone tightened. Go on, I urged. You have something stronger than money, David said. You have proof. The bank statements, the transfers, the hidden funds. And if you take this to court, the judge will see right through him. Meaning Alex won't just lose the money. He could face legal consequences for financial fraud. Fraud. I closed my eyes, letting that word sink in. I had been ready for a fight over assets, but this was bigger than I had ever imagined. A slow, calculated smile spread across my lips. I had loved Alex once, but after everything he had done, I would make sure he paid for it. I had always played fair, always believed in doing the right thing. But now I was ready to win. I took a deep breath and made a decision. I wasn't just going to fight for what was mine. I was going to bury him. I hung up the phone, my pulse pounding. David had just confirmed my worst fears. Alex hadn't just blindsided me with the divorce. He had been planning it for over a year, transferring money, setting up legal traps, and manipulating the system to leave me with nothing. He thought I wouldn't fight back. He thought I wouldn't find out. But now, I knew everything, and I wasn't going down without a fight. I sat on the floor of Alex's office, my hands shaking as I spread out the documents in front of me. Bank transfers, offshore accounts, a hidden $8,600,000 fortune. This was more than just a financial betrayal. It was fraud. I needed to be smart about my next move. If Alex found out that I had these documents, he would try to cover his tracks. I pulled out my phone and snapped photo after photo, making sure I had copies of everything. Then I sent them to 3 different places: my email, a secure cloud storage, and to Lisa, Alex's assistant. Lisa had been the one to warn me about his suspicious behavior. She might not have realized the full extent of his deception, but I knew she wouldn't betray me. Just in case, I sent a message along with the files. Lisa, I need you to hold on to these. If anything happens to me or my access to this information, I need you to send them to David Green immediately. Her reply was almost instant. Kelly, what the hell is this? Alex was hiding this much money? Yep, and now I'm going to make sure he pays for it. There was a long pause before she responded. Whatever you need, I've got your back. I exhaled slowly. Good, because I was about to start a war. I knew Alex was staying at his company's penthouse downtown. He was avoiding me, thinking that by the time I got the official divorce papers, I would be too numb, too drained to fight, but he had underestimated me. I grabbed the bank statements, stuffed them into my purse, and drove straight to the penthouse. When I reached the building, the doorman recognized me and let me in without a second glance. Alex was in for a surprise. I took the elevator up, my heart pounding. When I reached the door, I didn't knock. I used the key card he had forgotten to take back. The second I stepped inside, I saw him, sitting on the couch, drink in hand, looking completely relaxed, as if he hadn't just tried to ruin my life. When he saw me, his face twisted into annoyance. Kelly, he said, setting his glass down. What the hell are you doing here? I stepped forward and tossed the stack of bank statements onto the table. He glanced down at them, then back up at me, his face paling. Where did you get these? I crossed my arms. You really thought I wouldn't find out? He let out a forced laugh. Kelly, you don't understand. Oh, I understand perfectly. I cut him off. I understand that while I was being a loyal, loving wife, you were funneling millions into an account under your name alone. I understand that you thought you could file for divorce, leave me with nothing, and walk away scot-free. His jaw clenched. This is none of your business. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. None of my business? We are married, Alex. That means half of everything you have is legally mine. His eyes darkened. Not if I can prove that the money was mine alone. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. And how do you think a judge is going to react when they see these? I tapped the papers. Transfers made during our marriage, accounts you never disclosed, money you were legally required to share. His face twisted with rage. You have no proof that I cut him off again. I have plenty of proof. And more importantly, I smiled. I have David. He froze. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. David wouldn't but he did. I smirked. Your own lawyer told me everything. How you planned to lie? How you thought you could drag this out in court until I gave up? Alex's hand clenched into a fist. That idiot knows you screwed up, and he knows that I have a legal right to half of everything you tried to hide. For a moment, he said nothing. Just stared at me. Then his lips curled into a sneer. You think you've won? His voice was low, dangerous. This isn't over, Kelly. I picked up the papers and stepped back toward the door. You're right, I said. It's just getting started. Then I turned and walked away, leaving him to drown in the mess he created. Alex thought he could intimidate me. That sneer, the way he spat out, "This isn't over, Kelly," as if I was supposed to back down and let him win. But he didn't realize something. I wasn't the same woman he had underestimated all these years. This time, I was coming for everything I was owed. The morning after our confrontation, I walked straight into David Green's office. He looked up from his desk, rubbing his temples. "Kelly," he sighed. "I figured you'd be back." I dropped a folder onto his desk, the one filled with evidence. "You told me I could ruin him," I said coolly. "Let's make sure that happens." David's eyes flicked down to the documents. He slowly opened the folder, scanning the pages. I watched as his expression hardened. "You've been busy," he muttered. "I don't waste time." He let out a breath, shutting the folder. "All right, let me be clear about what this means." He sat back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "Alex isn't just looking at losing money. He's looking at possible fraud charges." I nodded. And David continued, "If we take this to court, he's screwed. Not only do you get half, but the judge will take into account his attempts to hide assets. That means he could end up paying you more than just the 50%. I smiled. "Good." David hesitated. "Kelly, Alex is desperate right now. He's not going to go down without a fight." I leaned forward. "Neither am I." That afternoon, we filed a legal motion against Alex, not just for divorce, but for fraud, financial misconduct, and intentional deception. It didn't take long for the news to reach him. The first call came from an unknown number. I picked up. "You crazy?" Alex's voice burst through the speaker, furious. I smirked. "Hi, honey. Miss me? You went to the court? Are you out of your damn mind?" I leaned back in my chair. I figured since you wanted everything to go through lawyers, I'd make it official. His breathing was ragged, like he was barely keeping it together. "You have no idea what you're doing." "Oh, I know exactly what I'm doing, Alex," I said, my voice like ice. "I'm taking what's mine." Silence. Then he did something unexpected. He laughed. A dark, bitter laugh. "You think you've won? This is just a game to you, isn't it?" I tilted my head. "No, Alex, this is justice. And you? You played yourself." 2 weeks later, we were in court. Alex had managed to find a lawyer. Some slick, arrogant guy who clearly thought this would be an easy win. He was wrong. Because when the judge reviewed the bank statements, the transfers, and the hidden accounts, his entire demeanor shifted. "Mr. Carter," the judge said, narrowing his eyes, "would you like to explain why you failed to disclose these assets during the divorce filing?" Alex shifted in his seat. "Those funds were from before the marriage," he stammered. David stood. "Your Honor, these transfers began a year ago, well within the marriage. That makes them joint assets. My client is entitled to half." The judge nodded. I stole a glance at Alex. His face was pale. His jaw clenched so tight I thought it might crack. He was losing, and he knew it. Then David delivered the final strike. "Your Honor, given the deliberate attempt to hide assets, we would also like to request punitive damages." Alex's lawyer jumped up. "Objection. Denied," the judge said sharply. He turned to Alex. "Given the evidence, I am inclined to rule in favor of Mrs. Carter. Not only will she receive half of all assets, but given the attempt to commit fraud, she is entitled to an additional financial settlement." Alex's hands curled into fists. I watched, my heart pounding as the judge delivered his ruling. Alex would lose everything. Not just half. More because of his own greed. Because he thought he could play me. But now, I was the one who had won. The court adjourned, and I gathered my things. As I stepped into the hallway, I heard footsteps behind me. "Kelly." Alex's voice was hoarse. I turned to face him. He looked hollow, like a man who had just realized he lost the war. "Don't do this," he muttered. "You already got what you wanted." I studied him for a moment. Then I leaned in and whispered, "No, Alex. You got what you deserved." His face twisted. And with that, I walked away, leaving him behind this time for good. I walked out of the courthouse that day with my head held high, the weight of 10 years of betrayal finally lifting off my shoulders. "Alex?" He walked out a broken man. The judge's ruling had been devastating for him. Not only did I get half of everything, I got more. The fraud charges tipped the scales in my favor, and the additional settlement meant that I was walking away with a fortune. Alex, on the other hand, was walking away with nothing. The next few weeks were a spectacle. Word spread fast. Alex had lost. And in his world of high finance and power-hungry investors, losing meant weakness. I heard through the grapevine that his business took a nosedive. Investors pulled out, clients stopped trusting him, and his once thriving empire started to crumble. He tried to keep it together, but in the end, he had no money left to fight. Without the hidden funds, without his fortune, he was drowning. And the final nail in the coffin, he had to sell his penthouse. The same place where he had sneered at me, so confident that he had everything under control. Now it was gone. I found out through Lisa, who was still working at his firm, that he had a mistress all this time. She left him the second the money ran out. Apparently, his mistress had been expecting a luxury lifestyle once I was out of the picture. Instead, she got a broke, disgraced fraud. One day, she just disappeared, blocked his number, and moved on to richer prey. Alex had given up everything for her, and in the end, she had left him with nothing. Poetic justice. As for me, life had never been better. With the settlement, I was able to buy my dream home. Not a penthouse, not some flashy trophy house. Number A, beautiful, peaceful place. One that felt like home. For the first time in years, I felt free. No more walking on eggshells. No more doubting myself. No more wondering if the person sleeping beside me was lying through his teeth. I had won. Not just the case, not just the money, but my life back. One morning, as I was sipping coffee on my porch, I got a text message from Alex. For a moment, I just stared at it, debating whether to even open it. Then curiosity won. "Alex, can we talk?" I huffed out a laugh. Talk? Now? Where was that energy when he decided to end our marriage through a text? Where was that need to talk when he spent a year plotting against me? I didn't reply. Instead, I typed out something short. Me. No need. I've already said everything I needed to. Have a good life, Alex. Then I blocked his number for good.